Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started with our meeting. We've got a pretty robust agenda, and I appreciate everybody that's joining us today for our TIRZ 3 meeting. Mrs. Huerta, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Everett Roy.
Present.
Board members Greg Smith.
Here.
Carolyn Bond. Here. Roland Barrera.
Here.
Rudy Garza is absent. Paulette Guajardo is absent. Gil Hernandez, absent. Michael Hunter.
Here.
Susan Hutchison.
I'm here.
Ben Molina.
Present.
Joe McComb. Here. Jim Sedgwick. Here. Okay, we do have a quorum of the board present to conduct the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I just want to let everybody know that we will have a visitor. The Honorable Scott Turner is going to be joining us. He's the Executive Director for the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. Should be here right around 1:45. When he is here, we're going to stop what we're doing. That way he has a moment to address the board. With that, I understand that there's no public comment?
Yes,
no
sir.
written public comment received?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Do I need to ask if there's anybody out there that wants to address public comment?
We don't have public out here today, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Next is the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the financial report.
Good afternoon. Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance. They're pulling the presentation up for me. Or maybe not. There it goes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So this is the financial position for the 10 months of the fiscal year ended July 31st, 2020. We began the year in October of October 19 with 4.8, almost $4.9 million in fund balance. Revenues to date, we've realized $1.7 million. Our expenditures to date are almost $700,000, which leaves us an ending fund balance of $5.9 million as of July 31st. We do have $4.8 million in commitments that have been made, leaving us a balance available for commitments of $1.1 million. That does conclude my presentation. I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions related to the financial report? Okay, there's no action required. Mrs. Huerta, do we know if Alyssa's joined us yet?
Yes, sir, she's on the line.
Okay, perfect. All right, today there is no executive session. Also, I'd like to mention that item number 4 is postponed. We will be picking that item up at a later time. So we'll go ahead and start with agenda item number 5, which is a motion approving amendment number 1 to the Downtown Development Reimbursement Agreement for 807 North Upper Broadway.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, board members. Alyssa Bedetta Mason, Executive Director of the Downtown Management District. Item number 5 is a motion to extend the 807 North Upper Broadway project. This is being developed by Fraser Companies. They've had some supply chain issues as a result of COVID and are requesting a 6-month extension. So we are recommending to extend the deadline. Their performance deadline is today, but we are recommending to extend that deadline until March 31st of 2021 to give them time to complete the project. We have toured the property. They're making significant progress. There's a very impressive rooftop patio. I think we have some photos of it if we can pull those up. Just for visual aid, and you may have it also in your packet that was mailed out or delivered and sent out and shared. But at this time, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay.
We're really excited about this project continuing to move forward.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, I
Alyssa.
move for approval.
Just a moment. We're going to take a break here for just a moment because we have our guest, Honorable Scott Turner here.
Good afternoon, TIRZ 3. For the record, Christine Bryant, Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. We have an honored guest touring our city today, Mr. Scott Turner with the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, and to talk about Opportunity Zones. So we just wanted to introduce him to you all while he was in town.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Councilmember and Mayor. Good to see you. My name is Scott Turner, and I serve as the Executive Director of the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. And we have been touring Corpus and North Beach and downtown yesterday and today, and just had a very productive meeting with a regional meeting, if you will, with the Coastal Bend area. But I'm so happy to be here, and just wanted to say hello and thank you to all of you here at TIRZ 3 for your work. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your willingness to invest in development and economic development. Really appreciate that. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to travel around our country in revitalization projects in urban areas, rural areas, and tribal areas. And Corpus Christi is really special, and this whole region is special. There's a lot of potential here, a lot of great things going on at the port and other areas. But just want to say that your labor and what you do is not in vain, but you are really been a tremendous blessing to so many people. So thank you. And I'm a Texas guy. I live in Frisco, in North Dallas. And so from the president to Dr. Ben Carson, I bring greetings to you, but also to say thank you for your work and for your service to the people of this region, and also really to the people of our country, because you directly and indirectly so many people impact so many people. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you, Mayor, for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's say something. But we just want to thank you for coming, and he shared he had some lifelong memories of Corpus Christi at our lunch meeting. When he was a youngster, the family came down, and he said he'd never seen so much water, and said, "You're going to learn to surf," and he did, and he fell off the surfboard, and the fish bit him, and then his friend fell off the surfboard behind him, and it hit him in the ankle, and said that didn't slow him down, though, in his NFL career, but he's got fond memories of Corpus Christi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come back and see us anytime.
Okay, Alyssa, we will resume on item number 5. Are there any, does the board have any questions for the staff on this extension for 807 Upper Broadway?
Here, Mr. Chairman, I know that, I just wanted to clarify, I made a motion during all that, before all that started. But yes, obviously, if anybody has any questions.
Okay. So seeing that there's no questions, we do have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 6 is a motion authorizing amendment number 2 for the downtown TIRZ, or Downtown Development Reimbursement Agreement for Americano Properties for improvements to the property located at 415 to 419 People Street.
Yes, sir. So item number 6, as you said, is for a 1-month extension for this property, 415 to 419 People Street. There was a slight technical supply issue with the awning on this property. So this project actually is complete. We do have a slide for you as well on this item titled Americano Properties Update. There we go. Perfect. So you can see here this project is complete. They've spent a significant amount of money, I believe $150,000 all said on this upgrade for the exterior. You can see there's vast improvements. Previously, the awning was just in kind of abysmal condition. So there's a fresh new awning out there. The wrong one essentially was delivered right before the end date. So this project has been completed, but in order to kind of stay technically into compliance, we are requesting that the board give it a formal extension so that we can proceed with all of our closeout work in our normal processes and stay in compliance with this project. Happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, seeing that we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve downtown development reimbursement agreement with Carlos Villarreal for improvements to a property located at 419 Peoples.
Yes, sir. So this item is a presentation. I believe the file is produce art gallery presentation, if we can have that open. This item is, it's actually a new project we're excited about. It's at a smaller scale, so we felt that this was kind of nice, straightforward. We could just bring it to the board in open session, give you an overview of it, and continue our normal business. So if we can have the next slide. This is the current site. You can see it is formerly the Hanks Lounge. This is owned by the developer Dusty Olivedia. He is a Grammy-nominated recording artist who's chosen to make a home in Corpus Christi and to continue to invest in the creative culture here and help facilitate and grow new creatives, which is really essential as we're revitalizing our downtown. So this project is in line with that. So the proposed development is an art gallery and studio space. It will host art exhibitions and events, and it will be creative workspace for artists. Next slide. This is the current condition. You can see that they did some clean out work from the former Hanks site, and they are now ready to move forward with improvements. And once they figured out what they wanted to do with the property, they came to us to kind of work out, look for assistance in developing and building out this site. Next slide. You can see here's the floor plan. So it will be a gallery in the front space. There will be an ADA compliant bathroom. That's one of the things that was missing from the previous establishment there that had been operating for decades. So we now have an opportunity to upgrade that facility. And then there will be a prep studio in the back. Next slide. So here are some interior concepts. This is just kind of inspirational photos. You can see a nice clean finish out that will complement the artwork and the exhibits that are done here. Next slide. And this is some of the work of Carlos Villarreal. He is the individual who will be owning and running this gallery. He is also a professor at the university, just a very talented photographer. And so, you know, everyone associated with this group of creatives is really interested in kind of helping train our community and artists in our community and learn how to translate that talent into real tangible products that can then be used to benefit. So this is just an example of some of the work that he has undertaken, a recent exhibit called The Fruits. Next slide. So our recommendation here is a new commercial tenant finish out program. He will be leasing this site, so up to $7,500 for finish out. Give it a 1-year window for completion. It meets the goals of the commercial tenant finish out program. We are putting a new operation in a currently vacant space. We have a successful artist, professor, and exhibitioner. And again, it contributes to that art and cultural scene that we are working hard to curate and develop. Happy to answer any other questions.
Are there any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have a motion approving amendment number 1 to the Downtown Development Reimbursement Agreement for Americano Properties, LLC, for Dusty's Taco Bar located at 322 North Chaparral.
Yes, sir. So this item, Dusty's Taco Bar, Americano Properties. This item is it's twofold. We are requesting an extension because of the current economic environment. The developer has run into some challenges, and we want to be accommodating and supportive to this developer, as this has been the first time that this property has actually seen this type of investment and interest. in a very long time. Also, this developer has completed a significant amount of work. This is Dusty Oliveria. They have replaced the roof and the HVAC on the property. They've ran into some issues with some previously undiscovered asbestos. So in order to give them time to remediate that, which we will really have to tackle this challenge in a lot of our buildings. So working, hand in hand with this developer to address that additional issue, we're recommending an increase in their incentive package from $30,000 to $41,500. The bids they've gotten for the asbestos remediation are around $23,000 mark. And then we're recommending an extension for a year because the previously conceived taco bar with today's COVID environment, they just need some additional time to work out some of those logistics and the financing around that. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, we'd appreciate a motion to help support this project.
I move for approval.
Second.
We've got approval in a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Next item is a resolution approving the Fifth Amendment to the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone 3 project.
Okay, good afternoon, Heather Holbert, Director of Finance. So the item that we have before the board is recommended changes to the project and financing plan for the TIRZ. So the project and financing plan is the guiding document for activities within the TIRZ and is modified to change programs or the focus of the TIRZ. This is not something that has to be modified every year, but we do modify it. As you can see, this is the fifth modification. As the downtown evolves and as we provide different focuses, the financing plan will be amended to help support those. The last time this project plan was modified was in 2018. And so we are presenting some suggested programmatic changes. These were presented to the board, I believe, at the last meeting. Alyssa did lay some of these proposed changes out, and she is available to explain what those changes are in greater detail. So I'll turn it over to you, Alyssa.
Thank you. If we can, thank you, Heather. If we can have the PowerPoint, or actually the PDF brought up, we'll just kind of walk through the legislative changes version of the document that is in your packet, really going into the meat of where we made the modifications. So if you notice the bottom portion of this page in the financing plan, this is where we lay out in advance what it is that we are going to do. And so this is where we'll focus any changes as we modify our activities for the reinvestment zone. So the changes are underlined, and you can see in a different color, a brownish orange. The first change that we made here is that we just kind of outlined that the board may make exceptions to any of the subsequent guidelines for catalytic projects. It does state also that if that is done, then we will then account for that at the next project plan amendment. So that creates a better pathway for modifications to be made to give some more discretion to the board and administration as we're negotiating and trying to facilitate development. So that's a kind of an overall change. Now going specifically into our incentive programs for the Chaparral Street Property Grant Program, we wanted to provide some clarification. This is a program where we help fund renovation costs for properties that are vacant on Chaparral Street because that is our main street focus and where we're trying to build out the most density. So here we're recommending that we just clarify that's on renovation costs, a 50-50 split on renovation costs. And then we had kind of informally incorporated a 20% incentive cap. It was a best practice. But with the changing economic environment, some of the challenges we are already running into on Chaparral Street, we are recommending that we kind of suspend that for FY21, still looking at the way that the incentive serves as a proportion to the project and maxing out any one property's incentive amount at $100,000, which is how, for a single fiscal year payout. And that's how we've been conducting that program, but we wanted to document it here. The next modification that we have in the new commercial tenant finish out program, we provided clarification that that is intended to activate vacant spaces, not just to kind of cannibalize our own existing business operations and moving them to new facilities. We also addressed here the fact that since 2015, 16, when we really launched these incentives, what we've come to identify is that we don't actually have a lot of white box ready spaces. So when we do have something that's nearly white box ready, it has plumbing, it has mechanical, it has a roof that doesn't leak, we're able to match that with a tenant relatively quickly. But the challenge that we are running into is that we now don't have enough spaces that have all of those things raring to get a new tenant. So what we are recommending here is adding kind of putting an add-on to the property owner. So if they find a new tenant, we can then add on for the property owner a grant for mechanical, electrical, or plumbing up to $20,000 if they get a 6-month waived rent lease. So that creates a carrot to really incentivize some of the property owners who may be kind of on the edge about investing in their property and kind of bringing them into compliance. This carrot will enable us to facilitate a little bit more development as we've identified that as a holdup and a bottleneck really that we are facing in our revitalization. The next change that we are recommending in the project specific development agreement, number 4, let me back up. The Downtown Living Initiative, which is a $10,000 per unit incentive. We had previously listed 10 units as the minimum number of units necessary to access that incentive. In working with the local market and developers and kind of understanding what they're willing to invest in and where they're seeing returns, we're recommending a reduction to 3 units. That will enable us to maybe activate some spaces that are a little bit smaller than that previous 10-unit threshold. So I think that that will open up some opportunities for development. In the project-specific development agreement, this is kind of I call it a catch-all. It enables us to reimburse for costs that specifically are incurred because of redevelopment in this reinvestment zone. So things like environmental remediation and code compliance, historic preservation, structured parking, urban design components, landscaping, public improvements or utility upgrades. Additionally, we have a category for projects that are over a certain threshold. And the way that this one works is that we rebate future property tax. So we'll enter into an agreement and say for 5 years, we will rebate you 75% of the tax increment to finance some of these improvements. So kind of in a similar vein to the Downtown Living Initiative, we are recommending a modification, almost an expansion of the threshold. So previously we anticipated that projects over 100 units would be knocking down our doors based on all the demand studies that we had when we put this proposal together. But now we're looking at really facilitating a smaller scale. So we'd like to change that 100 to 10 units. That'll enable us to have a tool, a 10-unit development. Adding 10 units still will add a significant amount of activity in any part of our reinvestment zone. So we feel like that is an appropriate evolution of this program. Additionally, we had previously identified the $10,000 amount because our studies showed that it was $100,000 to develop a new unit. But recent development costs have shown us that that is actually increased significantly in the past few years. So we recommend increasing that threshold, still have it as a 10% kind of proportion of a development cost, but increasing that cap to up to $20,000 per unit if the development costs warrant that level of support. So those are the four changes that we recommended for our incentive programs based upon the July presentation. And then moving on into kind of the other programmatic things that we do in order to facilitate development. We just made a slight correction there on site management and development because we launched our vacant building program, launched that work in 2017. It's continued on, so those did not terminate in 17 and 18, so we corrected that word there. And then down to number 7, in traffic pattern study and streetscapes. Several years ago, the Reinvestment Zone funded an analysis to figure out how we needed to make improvements in the public right-of-way in order to help people move on foot and on cars better throughout our downtown area. So this identifies and pulls out specifically some of those items that we are funding from the Reinvestment Zone that came as recommendations from the study. So things like the streetscape program, our artesian park improvements, the two-way conversion from Shoreline to Water Street that is later on this agenda. Some general right-of-way maintenance issues that we did not previously have a funding bucket identified for. So things like painting curbs or replacing some sort of capital that's in the downtown street. We're making that kind of a grant funding available. The DMD actually will hopefully, the next item you'll approve us administering that. And then the item about the Broadway Bluff maintenance and repair assessment, which was funded in this fiscal year and being rolled to FY21. And that's because the Bluff is such a wonderful, unique feature that's an asset to our downtown area. But there are some analysis that I think are outstanding related to how we maintain it, how we improve it, how we manage it. For us, it's a great source of blight in the DMD. This is often an area that we are having to clean up after people. And so it's problematic, but it really should be serving as an asset. So that study hopefully will enable us to tackle that problem and really kind of bring the Bluff into its rightful place in our community. And then some other, on the other programs initiatives, when that's added on, this really kind of encapsulates when the downtown management district scope expands. So you can see here that has the history of that. And then we add the Artesian Park upgrades, which we have implemented this year. And then for the next year, right-of-way and public space maintenance, so that we are able to invest these reinvestment zone funds properly into the public right-of-way. So that pretty much concludes the project plan amendments being proposed at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Board Member Smith?
Thank you, Alyssa. Now, I see you're broadening in two directions. One's the public on there, and the other's the subsidies or incentives on. What's happening downtown? So one part of this is the white space, increasing that. How's demand coming? So on the commercial side, could you brief us really quickly on that? We've been adding residential space, so what are our rents and demands looking like in those two areas?
Sure. So we do have, a challenge with downtown with kind of the economics about what people think sometimes that something can lease at versus what it can actually lease at. And one of the challenges that we have there is that we have such a great supply of office space and retail. A lot of them really are not in the condition where they're ready to be leased. And so what you have then is basically sites that are priced out, where small businesses are priced out. And so I think that we have observed that. We have a number of studies that kind of look at those economics, and we think that if we can get the facilities in a digestible state, we'll be able to match those with the demand that we see from the small businesses who want to be downtown. The real challenges right now is there's such a gap between what these small businesses can absorb in startup costs and what is needing to be invested in these properties in order to accommodate a small business. So that's where we're able to use the reinvestment zone tool to try to fill that gap, which is what we are proposing. Does that answer your question, sir?
Not really. What I'm asking, just occupancies and market rates. What are you seeing down? What's happening on the commercial side?
Occupancies and market rates. That's a challenging data point to have because we don't necessarily have these spaces like actively listed in the market. So we can't say we have this much space that's ready to go in the market and it's this percent vacant because they're not in that condition.
Do we have any, it's just total square footage occupied? Do we have any matrix on that? Or where are we heading? What direction?
Yes, sir. So let me gather some of those figures and I can send those over to you, and I can also put them on the agenda for our next meeting. We do a report on this annually, and so I can say from memory last year we had the highest level of occupancy, but I would hate to misquote those numbers to you right here on the fly. So may I send those, follow up with you with that information?
And the same thing residential. And where I'm going with this is, so we've got the incentive program, and then we have the public improvements like you're talking about. So if we've got a strong and expanding market, the question is, I think your plan is broad enough, it gives you flexibility. But, what's our emphasis point? Do we do it on incentive/subsidies, or we do it on just general public improvements that promotes the whole area as opposed to a pocket here and a pocket there?
Sure. I think that I think it has to be a two-pronged approach, and we've seen investment, like we spent about $10 million on Chaparral Street. I think, the expenditure of the funds alone is not going to be enough to facilitate development if we're not actually solving a problem. So in the long term, we did see that become a successful project because we ultimately converted the street to two-way. But when we had spent that initial, certain amount of money on the street without it actually, solving a problem, we saw it had almost an opposite effect. So I think it's a balance, and we'll continue to bring that data to this board so that we can make good policy decisions and follow that two-prong approach.
Well, and particularly on the residential side, if we've got an improving market where you're doubling the amount of that rental subsidy, the question is, what's the value of that if the market, and I don't know, if the market's improving, then it seems to be more do the public type improvements that enhance everything and create that, the planters that you did out there, that the cleaning that you're doing and things like that, that goes a long, long way to incentivizing people to invest in downtown and with it, so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Are there any other questions? Seeing that there's no other questions, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Alyssa. Next, agenda item number 10, we have a motion to approve a service plan for fiscal year 2021 and renew the interlocal cooperation agreement between Corpus Christi Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone 3 and the Corpus Christi Downtown Management District.
Yes, sir. Oh, Heather, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
That's okay. Yes, so this before you is the service plan for the fiscal year 2021 for the DMD. So the city does have a contract with the DMD to administer the TIRZ programs along with the incentive agreements, and is a partner with the DMD in the downtown revitalization. The service plan lays out the core priorities along with quarterly associated goals that go with the priorities. Alyssa does have a presentation, and we'll go into further detail on this.
Thank you, Heather. So this is our annual service plan being presented to you, the board, for approval, as is required by our service plan contract. So I'll go ahead and go in a little bit about the projects that we have completed this year and what we're proposing for next fiscal year. Next slide. So this is just an overview of our downtown management district. We were established in 1993. We have a small boundary, that yellow portion. That is our core district. The property owners there pay a tax rate higher than the rest of the city. In 2015, the new executive director led a rebranding, freeing up the term downtown to refer to the larger area that would be more traditionally considered our downtown or central business district. And in 2016, the DMV secured a service agreement with this board, the TIRZ, to expand services to the larger boundary, which is outlined by the green dashes. So you can see the reinvestment zone is larger than the core Marina Arts District. We facilitate incentives and cleanliness and some activities in that larger boundary. And we focus on revitalization for the larger area, while of course maintaining our core services in that Marina Arts District. Next slide. This is our team. We are a small and nimble team. We have 4 main areas of operation, creating cleaner, safer, more beautiful and accessible downtown. We have a clean team that facilitates that, so they're out on the street every day. We then develop and improve the district with our incentives. We market and promote the district through events and social media and continuing to elevate our brand and awareness. And then we're very intentional about building an effective professional organization, including, participating in industry groups, downtown industry groups, and pursuing professional training for our team. Next slide. So we operate very strategically. We have strategic plans that go over a 3-year period, and then we have 1-year service plans, and then we report back annually. So this is a kind of history of since we've implemented that process. We did get approval from our board, and we will be presenting here to actually extend our 2017 through 2020 service plan. Because in the middle of the COVID crisis, it became a little difficult to kind of see past the current situation. We were looking at initiating that in May, and it was just very difficult when our bars were, at minimal reduced operations and our restaurants were uncertain. It was difficult to kind of think longer term and visionary at that point. So our board felt it was appropriate to extend the service plan for 1 year to get us to next summer. We also got our year kind of interrupted in the middle of it at downtown. We're really in the business of bringing people together, and so really wanting to finish out the year and make sure that we start our next strategic plan kind of in a good space is something that was a priority. So we've extended that strategic plan and are proposing this current service plan as an extension of that. Next slide. Here's a history of funding of the DMD. You can see back to 2009, our organization was much smaller, had a much smaller capacity. It grew. The city general fund match is dollar for dollar now. That was reinstated in FY 14-15. The advisory council was created where private sector partners started contributing, and our organization has expanded since then. Our proposed budget for this current year is $1.5 million, with $610,000 of that coming from this board. $510,000 are for our service contract, and there are 2 special buckets for specific projects, the right-of-way maintenance and other park improvements. Next slide. Here is our advisory council. So these are the private corporations who invest alongside the reinvestment zone board and the property owners who pay a tax rate, pay that additional levy. So the port signed on last year as a pioneer. They challenged us to get some partners to sign on, and so we were able to do that. And so we have here some industry leaders, AEP, CCISD, HEB, the county, Valero, and Voestalpine. And then we have our patrons, some of our local banks and contractors who also contribute. So we have a wide variety of participation in addition to your funding. Next slide. So some highlights, and we'll go further into this in our annual report. We did earn our Main Street accreditation this year, so this was quite a great accomplishment. We did expand our holiday decorations. We assisted in many new business launchings like Aka Sushi reopening, Dokio downtown. We facilitated the purchase of the A&M downtown building, so that's pretty significant of an endeavor. We finally got to implement the Sidewalk Cafe process. We grew our social media following up to 15,000 on Instagram, and that's very significant for our target demographic. When we're trying to, attract and retain young professionals, having this large of a following with that target demographic is significant in us shifting perceptions and making downtown cool and interesting. We also launched the Downtown Corpus Christi Coloring Book, which was met with a lot of success. We have successfully sold 700 copies of that to date. Next slide.
Listen,
Yes, sir.
just backing up a minute, I may have misunderstood. You said on that page, on one page, you got the DMD funding and organizational improvements,
Yes, sir.
and then your advisory council.
Yes, sir.
Are these members that are, how do you get on the advisory council?
Well, you contributed an amount of money allotted kind of with the category. So we have Downtown Pillars that contribute $10,000. And it's when we go through an annual meeting, I did this kind of exact presentation with them on Friday. And they just invest, and we're able to utilize and leverage that funding.
All right, well, I see over here on your DMD funding that it looks like the city through the general fund gives you about $314,000 or $15,000.
Yes, sir.
I don't see a city logo over there on your advisory council.
Yes, sir. I will.
County got on for 10,000, 300,000 ought to get us something.
Yeah, so I apologize. That is my oversight. The city's participation is far above and beyond any advisory council participation. That slide I intend to kind of represent how we're leveraging your contribution.
So do we get 30 times the votes that they get?
Well, yeah, yes, sir, sure.
Anyway, just asking.
Yes,
Might want to check that oversight next time. Thank you.
yes, sir.
Alyssa, hi, this is Paulette.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was making sure you can hear me. So just to follow up on that, can you tell me a little bit, the advisory, that board, so you pay, are there different levels of money that one pays to be on this advisory board? So
Yes.
interesting. So what are the different levels of sponsorship?
So we have downtown patrons, downtown partners, and downtown pillars, and then the port has signed on as a pioneer. Our city funding is through the interlocal agreement sorry, that wasn't your question though. I'm sorry, I was answering the mayor's question through your question. But those are the levels for the advisory council.
Okay, okay. And then their role is exactly what after they pay these monies? Or what is their?
They get a presentation and they get to give us feedback, and they are, I give them recognition on this slide and on our social medias accounts.
Okay, okay. I appreciate them. I just want to make sure that the community also obviously has input.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Alyssa, first of all, I'd like to just thank you and the Downtown Management District staff for all that you do and the improvements. I certainly, every time I'm downtown and walking around, I notice something new and different, and keep up the good work on that. Are there any other questions?
Move to approve.
I've got
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a motion authorizing the expenditure of an additional $200,000 for the one-way to two-way street conversion of specified downtown streets, for a total expenditure of $400,000.
Can we pull up the presentation, please? Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. Randy Almaguer, Senior Management Analyst. Item number 11 before you is a motion to authorize the expenditure of an additional $200,000 for the one-way to two-way street conversion of specified downtown streets for a total expenditure of $400,000. Next slide, please. So in February 2018, the board approved a motion authorizing the use of $200,000 for the conversion of one-way street segments to a two-way traffic pattern, connecting Water Street and Shoreline Boulevard to provide easier and less confusing access to the downtown area. Here on the PowerPoint, you have an aerial view of the 6 streets that will be converted. That's Star, Lawrence, Lomax, which was previously William, John Sartain, Schatzel, and Peoples. Next slide, please. So here we have fog seal versus thin overlay. The reason for the increase in the budgeted amount is that the original budget of $200,000 used a treatment called fog seal to change the markings from the one-way to two-way markings. A fog seal is an application of a specialty formulated emulsion to an existing asphalt pavement surface and is mostly used for preventative maintenance. Staff is recommending that instead of utilizing fog seal, the city use the thin asphalt overlay method to change the markings. A thin asphalt overlay is placed for pavement preservation, which are functional overlays of less than 1.5 inches to extend the service life of the pavement. The benefits of the thin asphalt overlay are improved ride, corrected rutting, impermeability, and reduced road noise, and also lasts approximately 7 to 10 years. Next slide, please. Here are some examples of prior fog seal on Lawrence Street. As you can see, pavement cracking shows and pavement markings bleed through the fog seal. Next slide, please. And here we have a breakdown of the cost between fog seal and thin asphalt overlay for each street. The total cost for fog seal will be approximately $153,000, and the total cost for thin asphalt overlay will be approximately $342,000. You see highlighted there is HBS. It does stand for the Highway Barricade System, which is needed for traffic barricades and safety barriers. That cost, as you can see, is the same for either option. Next slide, please. Here on this slide is the conditions right now for the 6 streets. And then just to make a note, I believe it's Schatzel that has the 2 streets that'll be converting to east and westbound, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that map in front of me. It should be on. Can we go back a few slides? I believe it's slide 2. Thank you. So you can see that circled from your left, going from your left to your right, it forks there. That's the 6th Street would be in there. All right. Can we go to slide 7, please? Thank you. So staff recommends the choice of option 1, which would include the thin asphalt overlay, the pavement-based rehabilitation, sign installation, and pavement markings. Since fog seal does not increase the life of the pavement and only serves as a surface treatment, staff feels that thin asphalt overlay is a better option since it does increase the life of the pavement 7 to 10 years. The funds are available in the TIRZ 3 budget, and the picture you are currently looking at is what a thin asphalt overlay looks like. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I stand by for any questions.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
The fog overlay, that's the real thin one.
The thin asphalt overlay? Or the fog seal is?
The fog sealant.
That it sprays like?
That's a spray type.
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Is the city going to do away with that type of sealant or whatever? Is that something that we're going to continue to do, or do we know?
Yeah, we're not going to do away with it, but it has there's a right place to put it. So it's mainly used when you're restriping, in this instance.
Yeah.
Or if you need to freshen up a street. And so there may be some cases where we have relatively new streets where it's a good application. Yeah, we're not doing away with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered. All right. Are there any other questions? Seeing that there's no questions, do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
So we've got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Just one question though. If you're gonna make these a 2-way, are you redoing the way you got the parking? I mean, if you got folks coming 2 ways, you're gonna eliminate the curbside parking or what?
Do we have Rotna on there, on the meeting? Yeah, I have to get back to you with that, sir.
'Cause, I mean, it looks like you got, on this picture here, I'm not sure what street this is, but you got head-in parallel parking, and then looks like you got a curbside. I don't know whether that's curb or that's supposed to be the middle of the road, but you got parking on both sides and you got 2-way traffic. I don't know where you're gonna put them.
I can get back to you on that, with that
Yeah,
answer, sir.
I mean,
You also have Exhibit A on there. It may show a little bit more on the back of that, after that presentation, that was provided.
Man, I don't know. This picture on, well, it really doesn't address, I mean, this picture here, fog seal versus overlay, you
Yeah.
still got head-in parking and,
And Alyssa, if you're still on, I think if I remember when they did Chaparral, they had to change the parking when they went to, I'm assuming they're going to have to do that, just because of the way.
well, I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
It's parallel parking on those streets, so I think it is as simple as when the pattern of the street will change, you'll park in the opposite direction now.
But it's parallel parking, not head-in.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Next item is identify future agenda items. We've already had, during our presentation, there was a request for a future agenda item from Board Member Smith. Oh, okay, that was a volunteer for a future agenda item, which, Alyssa, that was what, occupying to a report for occupancy related to commercial and residential?
Yes, sir. We will provide, that is part of our annual reporting process, so we'll make sure that we have that included when we provide our annual report at the next
Okay.
meeting.
All right, for the annual report. Are there any other future agenda items? Okay. Seeing that there's no further business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.